Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with our weekly update on social media. Thank you as always for joining us. Judicial Watch is your watchdog in Washington, D.C., and there is a lot going on in terms of government corruption. Further confirmation of yet more FBI corruption, this time protecting Hunter and Joe Biden. New illegal secrecy issues as it relates not only to Dr. Fauci, but we've also exposed, after a big-time cover-up, new information about the vaccine approval process that raises additional questions. Plus, there's a cover-up going on over in the Pentagon on critical race theory, specifically at the U.S. Naval Academy. So I'll talk about that as well. First up is the rule of law crisis caused by irredeemably corrupt Justice Department and the FBI. You saw that during the Trump administration. You saw that during the Obama administration. And of course, since no one has really been, in my view, successfully or appropriately punished, we're seeing it continue during the Biden administration. Part of it is the protection of the Biden criminal racket. The evidence suggests his whole family, including him, was involved. And on top of that, rather than while protecting Biden, they're targeting Trump. And the news that's being leaked this week is that the Justice Department is trying to criminalize First Amendment and other activity protected under the Constitution, namely the debate and disputes about the election, where Republicans and supporters of Trump, given the concerns they had about specific state elections, were talking about and had set up alternative slates of electors. Now, the left has said those are fake electors, and to even talk about that is illegal. And sure enough, the Justice Department is pursuing that allegation, which is obviously political, obviously retaliatory, and obviously geared at trying to make Trump's life miserable and trying to jail him, frankly, because, in large measure, he is seen as an opponent and likely candidate to oppose President Biden or whoever the Democrat nominee is in 2024. And of course, it also ensures that anyone who's concerned about election integrity generally is scared off from doing anything substantively about it. Now, back in 1960, Democrats set up alternative slates of electors in Hawaii. But when Republicans start talking about it and start taking steps in that regard in 2020, of course, it becomes a crime. And obviously, it isn't a crime, but this Justice Department has a habit of taking speech that is protected under the First Amendment, taking speech that's protected not only under the First Amendment's right to free speech generally, the right for association, and the right to petition your government. And of course, the issue of electors have other constitutional issues as it relates to state sovereignty, the Constitution's 12th Amendment, and the federal law guiding the counting of the Electoral College votes. All of which, the left is saying, well, we need to fix that law about the counting of Electoral College votes because it's ambiguous. Well, if it's ambiguous, obviously that's where the debate was and is about not only the 2020 election, but what was going on in Congress in terms of the challenges on January 6th, that again, the left wants to outlaw. They want to outlaw opposition and disputes and questions about elections they win. And they're now escalated it in such a way that they want to put you in jail if you say anything about it or do anything substantive about it. Certainly, in the least, you're getting harassed and subpoenaed and smeared by the January 6th committee, and worse, by the Justice Department. So this is a crisis for the rule of law. So while they're abusing their authority, once again, against Trump, remember, this is the same gang that tried to put Trump into jail and prosecute and harass him. They couldn't find any evidence to prosecute him, but they were harassing him about Russia, even though they all knew it was a big lie. So, the corruption is really dangerous to our Republican form of government because we trust, or we should be able to trust, the Justice Department to fairly apply the law and prosecute the law. And that trust is lost. It's completely lost, and I don't think it's retrievable under the current structures and the way the Justice Department is run. And now we have information from Chuck Grassley that what we suspected, well, we already knew generally what was happening with the Biden issue, that the FBI and the Justice Department were purposely protecting the Bidens, covering it up. They had the Hunter Biden laptop since at least December, if I recall, of 2019, right? They haven't done anything on it. They still haven't done anything on it, despite all the evidence of corruption, not only involving Hunter, but implicating his father. So that's been a protection racket without parallel in recent American history. I guess you would compare it to Hillary. But at least Hillary, they had a bit more of an aggressive investigation, largely because Judicial Watch was pressuring them, because we had courts allowing us to do a much more substantial investigation than you're normally able to under the Freedom of Information Act. But now we have information from a senior senator in the Senate, Chuck Grassley, who's always been an independent watchdog. He's done work independently as a senator, even outside the committee process, and a friend of whistleblowers. And he's been exposing the truth or whistleblower complaints he's been getting about FBI and Justice Department misconduct with respect to the targeting of Trump and the handling of the Biden investigations insofar as there are actual investigations. And more recently, he had some astonishing whistleblower complaints that he asked the Justice Department about in a letter dated earlier this week on July 25th, 2022. And the allegations are so serious, I thought it was worth reading in large measure the letter to you so that you knew what was going on. Because as you know, the big media won't tell you about this. And even the media who will tell you about this will only kind of glimmer or give you the surface and information about what's going on. But when you hear the detail, you're going to be outraged. And you're going to say what I said on Twitter, for instance, just recently, that the FBI is irredeemably corrupt. In the least, we should be cutting the FBI's budget in half. It's that bad. In the least. Now, the letter I'm going to read and other letters referenced in this letter are all available, I believe, on Senator Grassley's website, and we'll provide a link to it so you can look at them yourselves, because there's other material there that you're going to want to read. So he writes in this July 25th letter that's been released this week, "Dear Attorney General Garland and Director Wray," Senator Grassley writes, "On May 31st, 2022, I wrote to you regarding likely violations of federal laws, regulations, and FBI guidelines by Assistant Special Agent in Charge Timothy Thibault of the Washington Field Office of the FBI, based on a pattern of active public partisanship in his then public social media content. In that letter, I noted that Congress has a constitutional responsibility to ensure that the executive branch executes the law and uses taxpayer money appropriated to it in accordance with congressional intent. In furtherance of that constitutional responsibility, Congress has an obligation to investigate the executive branch for fraud, waste, abuse, and gross mismanagement, acts which undermine faith in the American people's government institutions. Those constitutional and legislative responsibilities apply to this letter to you. My letter also invited individuals, including current and former government employees, to contact me in my office to confidentially report allegations of fraud, waste, abuse, and gross mismanagement by FBI and Justice Department officials, including but not limited to Special Agent Thibault. In response, my office has received a significant number of protected communications from highly credible whistleblowers." So to interpret that paragraph is, I wrote a letter to you back in late May of 2022, a little over 2 months ago, and I told you that you had an FBI special agent who was a left-wing ideologue, and he was tweeting all this anti-conservative, anti-Republican material on his internet. And I think it's been taken down since. And I said, if there's anyone else who has other concerns, come to me. And by protected communications, that means whistleblowers communicating with Congress where they gain protection from retaliation as a result of their whistleblower status, meaning that's why the communications, quote, are protected. The information provided to my office involves concerns about the FBI's receipt and use of derogatory information relating to Hunter Biden and the FBI's false portrayal of acquired evidence as disinformation. The volume and consistency of these allegations substantiate their credibility and necessitate this letter. First, it's been alleged that the FBI developed information in 2020 about Hunter Biden's criminal, financial, and related activity. It is further alleged that in August of 2020, FBI Supervisory Intelligence Analyst Brian Auten, A-U-T-E-N, opened an assessment which was used by an FBI headquarters team to improperly discredit negative Hunter Biden information as disinformation and caused investigative activity to cease. Based on allegations, verified and verifiable, derogatory information on Hunter Biden was falsely labeled as disinformation. The basis for how the FBI headquarters team selected the specific information for inclusion in Auten's assessment is unknown, but in more than one instance, the focus of the FBI headquarters team's attention involved derogatory information about Hunter Biden. Accordingly, the allegations provided to my office appear to indicate there was a scheme in place among certain FBI officials to undermine derogatory information connected to Hunter Biden by falsely suggesting it was disinformation. Importantly, it's been alleged to my office that Auten's assessment was open in August 2020, which is the same month that Senator Johnson and I received an unsolicited and unnecessary briefing from the FBI that purportedly related to our Biden investigation, and a briefing for which the contents were later leaked in order to paint the investigation in a false light. So what was going on is they knew Johnson and Grassley were investigating Hunter Biden, and they were desperate. So the left, including members of the House, started leaking, obviously with the FBI and Justice Department's assistance in terms of spinning, the fanciful notion that somehow Hunter Biden's laptop was Russia disinformation, and it wasn't. Really obstruction of Congress in that regard, isn't it? As Senator Johnson and I have publicly noted, on July 13, 2020, then Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Senator Mark Warner, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and there you have it, Representative Adam Schiff, there he is again, sent a letter with a classified attachment to the FBI to express a purported belief that Congress was the subject of a foreign disinformation campaign. The July 13, 2020 letter included unclassified elements that, among other things, unsuccessfully attempted to tie our investigative work to foreign disinformation. Those unclassified elements were later leaked to the press to try and smear our Biden investigation as unrelated foreign disinformation. Then on July 16, 2020, then Ranking Member Peters and then Ranking Member Wyden, these are senators, requested a briefing on matters related to my and Senator Johnson's Biden's investigation from the very same FBI headquarters team that discredited the derogatory Hunter Biden information. The concurrent opening of Auten's assessment, which, as I said, as he says, was designed to protect Biden, the efforts by the FBI headquarters team and the efforts by the FBI to provide an unnecessary briefing to me, it was a setup. And Senator Johnson, that provided our Democratic colleagues fodder to falsely accuse us of advancing foreign disinformation, draws serious concern. I'd say. Second, it has been alleged that in September 2020, investigators from the same FBI headquarters team were in communication with FBI agents responsible for the Hunter Biden information targeted by Auten's assessment. The FBI headquarters team investigators placed their findings with respect to whether reporting was disinformation in a restricted access subfile reviewable only by the particular agents responsible for uncovering the specific information. This is problematic because it does not allow for proper oversight and opens the door to improper influence. So it was a cover-up even within the FBI. That's how I read this. Third, in October 2020, an avenue of additional derogatory Hunter Biden reporting was ordered closed at the direction of the Special Agent Thibault. my office has been made aware that the FBI agents responsible for this information were interviewed by the FBI headquarters team in furtherance of Alton's assessment. It's been alleged that the FBI headquarters team suggested to the FBI agents that the information was at risk of disinformation. However, according to allegations, all of the reporting was either verified or verifiable via criminal search warrants. In addition, Special Agent Thibault allegedly ordered the matter closed without providing a valid reasoning as required by FBI guidelines. Despite the matter being closed in such a way that the investigative avenue might be open later, it's alleged that the FBI officials, including Thibault, subsequently attempted to improperly mark the matter in FBI systems so that it could not be opened in the future. The aforementioned allegations put a finer point on concerns I have raised for many years about the political considerations infecting the decision-making process at the Justice Department and FBI. If these allegations are true and accurate, the Justice Department and the FBI are and have been institutionally corrupted to their very core, to the point to which the United States Congress and the American people will have no confidence in the equal application of the law. Attorney General Garland and Director Wray simply put, based on the allegations that I've received from numerous whistleblowers, you have systemic and existential problems within your agencies. You have an obligation to the country to take these allegations seriously, immediately investigate, and take steps to institute fixes to these and other matters before you. In light of these serious allegations and my ongoing investigation into the Justice Department and FBI misconduct, I expect you to provide the following no later than August 8th, 2022, as a preliminary matter so that Congress can perform an objective and independent review of the alleged misconduct. The case file for the Alton assessment, that fraud assessment, all records derived from reporting or derogatory information linked to Hunter Biden, James Biden, the president's brother, and their foreign business relationships that were overseen under the approval, guidance, and purview of Special Agent Thibault from January 1st, 2020 to the present. All records related to the derogatory information on Hunter Biden, James Biden, and their foreign business relationships. All leads sent to the Washington field office of the FBI that were under the purview of Special Agent Thibault that were ordered closed by Thibault and or denied for opening by the Justice Department's Public Integrity Section. All opened and closed cases initiated by the Washington field office of the FBI that were under the purview of Thibault that were ordered closed by him and or denied for opening by the Justice Department's Public Integrity Section. With respect to the August 2020 FBI briefing given to Senator Johnson and me, a copy of the FBI 302 for the briefing, all intelligence reporting products and analysis that formed the basis for the briefing, the names of the persons who recommended that Senator Johnson and I be briefed, a description of the process for deciding to brief us, and all records, including emails, relating to the briefing. Sincerely, Chuck Grassley, Ranking Member, Committee on the Judiciary. That's a pretty good letter, and it would have been even better if he had mentioned Joe Biden, because obviously this is what the cover-up he's highlighting is about. It's about protecting Joe Biden from the consequences of his work, his conspiracy, his collusion, his racketeering with his son, his brothers, and who knows who else to turn his public office, certainly as vice president, into a cash machine for him and his family. And here we have confirmation that the FBI and the Justice Department, confirmation produced through a senator as a result of FBI, Justice Department whistleblowers, that the FBI and Justice Department were protecting him. Protecting Biden and protecting Hunter. And of course, this was going on, the big deal, October 2020. What was going on in October 2020? There you go. Whoever said it is right out there. The laptop came out. Right? That's when the laptop was announced by the New York Post. So you have the FBI mimicking the lies put out there defending Biden in the public by so-called intelligence former officials, that it was Russia disinformation, it had the hallmarks of Russia disinformation. No, it didn't. It had the hallmarks of, as Chuck Grassley said, verified and verifiable through criminal search warrants information. So that's the rule of law crisis. Right now, this Justice Department is targeting Trump with an unprecedented and abusive investigation that is a direct attack on the civil liberties of Trump and other American citizens while protecting Hunter Biden and Joe Biden on issues related to criminal activity that they've been implicated in, that the evidence is strong happened. Now, what I like about these letters, what I like about letters like Grassley's is that, oh, now do you think Grassley's going to get all those documents? Of course he's not going to get all those documents. But what we can do is that we can send a FOIA request that's quite similar to that. And if they don't give us the documents, and not all of them can be gotten under FOIA, many of them can, or you'd be surprised what can be gotten, we can go to court. So already Judicial Watch is conducting, on top of its numerous FOIA investigations and FOIA lawsuits on Biden corruption, a new investigation on the new evidence of FBI corruption. And I tell you, it occurs to me, I now have a better explanation, or we have a better explanation as to why the Secret Service is hiding Hunter Biden's travel records and records about his travels. Because I think it raises issues about the corruption that their colleagues in the FBI and Justice Department are trying to cover up. So you can see I'm pretty heated about this. And the reason I'm heated about it is because this corruption goes to the heart of our constitutional republic, that we can't get the basic rule of law applied and enforced against public officials, even when the evidence is overwhelming. We saw it with Hillary. We saw it with the Obama-Clinton gang targeting Trump. And now we're seeing it again with Biden. There's no excuses. There's no plausible deniability. Judicial Watch has given them all the evidence. They don't even want to look for the records in the government. Judicial Watch looks for the records in the government. Oftentimes, certainly with Hillary, we had all the emails and all the information, internal records they needed. And with the laptop, it's all on the laptop. Mr. Bobulinski's provided testimony, or is able to, Biden family business partner, confirming that Hunter is that Joe is the big guy. There's new information out even today or this week where another Hunter Biden partner again refers to Joe Biden as the big guy. I mean, is it a mystery that Joe Biden is the big guy to the FBI? Of course it's not a mystery. So the cover-up continues. Judicial Watch is going to do its darndest under law to expose it and educate the American people about it. But we've got to pressure the Justice Department. We've got to pressure Congress to at least pretend to do the right thing. I say that sarcastically, but once you get the process going, sometimes justice is done. And here the process is being subverted, which is why you're seeing evidence of the obstruction of justice here. It raises criminal concerns. So if we get more FOIA documents, obviously I'll let you know. In the meantime, stay alert to this, because this is what the media doesn't want you to know about. And I encourage you to watch, not obviously you're watching the video, but to share it, comment, get the word out, educate your fellow Americans about what's really going on here in Washington, D.C., because I doubt they're going to hear it anywhere else but from us. So, when people talk about the deep state, they're often referencing the FBI, the Justice Department, the CIA, NSA, Pentagon, etc., and their attacks on Trump and their objections to constitutional government and self-government. Contempt for the rule of law, contempt for voters, contempt for taxpayers, thinking they know better than the people's elected representatives. That sort of arrogance that is so contemptuous of your right, as I say, to govern yourselves. So that arrogance isn't just limited to the national security state. It's also a clear and present danger in the deep state public health agencies. HHS, Health and Human Services, which has purview over NIH, National Institutes of Health, and CDC and the FDA and Fauci's agency is a sub-agency of NIH, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which spend boatloads of money on things like gain-of-function research in China. I mean, that's all you need to know, that they did that and they didn't want you to know about it. And of course, then there have been controversies over the way the vaccines have been handled and mandates and, and other public health pronouncements that too often seem based on politics rather than science, as Dr. Birx has confirmed in her recent book, confessing, in my view, to potential criminal activity and fraud. We have new documents coming out of the FDA, for instance, showing that FDA officials at the top were concerned about the Biden administration's vaccine Biden administration's vaccine booster timeline. They said timelines made no sense. And it wasn't just the Biden administration forcing this timeline on the FDA in terms of approving these controversial boosters, but you had also, according to these documents, the manufacturers of the drugs as well. We had to sue for the records, as always, because the FDA, again, thinks it's above the law, doesn't think it needs to follow transparency law, and just ignores requests for information. And it's only because Judicial Watch goes to court are we able to get much information. Sometimes we don't go to court and we get the information, but that's kind of the exception that proves the rule. So they gave us 112 pages. Maybe they have 112,000 pages hidden, who knows. They gave us the information in response to a lawsuit we filed earlier this year over a September 2021 Freedom of Information Act request. This was a simple request for essentially emails of the two top FDA vaccine officials. I mean, we weren't asking for give us all records about vaccines since the beginning of time, because these two vaccine officials resigned from the FDA because they saw the process was corrupted. Specifically over the White House's push of the controversial booster shots. And the specific report about what happened is that Gruber and Krause, who were the two officials we FOIA'd about, were among a group of resigning doctors who agreed that available evidence doesn't yet indicate a need for COVID-19 vaccine booster shots among the general population. And they resigned, I guess they saw the way things were going, and they resigned about a week before the booster shots ended up being approved by the FDA. The records that we received include an email by Gruber to her boss, Director Peter Marks at the Center for Biologics Evaluations and Research. Over the last couple of days, Janssen, which I believe is short for Johnson & Johnson, or another name for Johnson & Johnson, has bombarded us with emails regarding their booster dose studies. I'm also very concerned that companies such as Pfizer and Janssen are trying to put pressure on the Office of Vaccines Research and Review by way of PR. We need to be given time to consider their data and cannot be pushed by these companies, and for that matter, the administration, who try to impose timelines. She writes timeless, she means timelines, that make no sense, e.g. September 20th. It appears that at least Pfizer's data will not be aligned with this approach, and the N test numbers that they have are grossly insufficient. Obviously, we have to review the data, but we have taken a peek and have serious concerns. Lastly, and this is my personal opinion, data we have seen so far from various companies, Pfizer, Janssen, and Moderna, appear to suggest that the boosters are not needed. Now, in the end, I don't know if the boosters were needed or not. I have my suspicions about that I don't want to distract you on, but you can imagine what I think of this vaccine mania. In an email exchange on August 27th, 2021, Gruber replies to an email from Maureen Hess, a communications specialist, again at that Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research. Well, the message appears to be total buy-in and the need for boosters. This is not how I am writing the likely board decision. I'm trying to take a more neutral approach. This piece sounds as if we've already decided to approve this supplement. Hess responds, okay, I'll make some additional edits. But the commissioner, the acting commissioner, was included in this statement. So our edits may be rejected above us. After sending more emails about the edits, Gruber replies, from my perspective, this is as good as it can get. Obviously, this statement puts us into a real bind, but the damage is already done. Does any of this reassure you about the vaccine approval process at the FDA? At least the booster approval process? Doesn't assure me. In an August 20th, 21 email, there's an email back and forth regarding new data that Moderna was submitting to the FDA about its COVID vaccine. The writer tells Drs. Gruber and Krauss and other colleagues, I had to bite my tongue when Peter, likely Peter Marks, who again is the head of the key agency there evaluating vaccines, mentioned this morning we wouldn't be doing rushed reviews anymore so as not to ask about the booster doses that the administration promised to everyone by September 20th. So their sarcasm is, you're saying we're not going to do rushed reviews anymore, even though we've got this timeline of September 20th, which is a little over a month away. And then there is the question of the data, that will support these booster doses. Maybe I'm wrong, but my understanding is that Pfizer is proposing that their SPLA include the phase 1 booster data from a grand total of 23 subjects. I'm not sure what Moderna will have, but the data Fauci presented in the press conference from NIAID studies, which was about 25 subjects per treatment arm. Gruber states again in another email earlier that month that the team fully understands that the acting commissioner would like to approve this product very soon and are trying their best to complete their review and assessment, while at the same time maintaining our high standards and scientific and clinical integrity. Another August email. It sounds like Peter, again, this key official who has the approval authority in part, thinks that he has taken over all vaccine operations, not just the Pfizer BLA, which is the biologics license application. So it goes on. So you have these two officials complaining about the lack of data. By the way, when outsiders complain about the lack of data in these booster shots, you get censored. And here you have internal FDA people complaining about the lack of data supporting the need for these booster shots. Now, evidently, the boosters provide some additional, I don't know what, for a period of time after you get them. Evidently, it's outrageously insufficient period of time, because now they're asking people to get 4, potentially 5 shots in total. Maybe for all time, who knows? These FDA documents confirm a politicized approval process for the controversial COVID-19 vaccine booster shots. It is a scandal that it took months in a federal lawsuit for these troubling facts about this unprecedented and seemingly never-ending vaccine operation to come out. So I tell you, what's frustrating, among other things, is that this is basic information. We had 2 key officials at the FDA resign over this approval process, and it's little old Judicial Watch who has to come in and do the heavy lifting to get this information about this major issue. There's no more important drug in the history of modern man than these COVID vaccines. And yet, there's another group in Texas suing for COVID vaccine data. And I'm not to say there aren't people asking questions otherwise, but I tell you, the number of people in federal court over it, 2. As best I can tell, there are 2. I'm sure there are others, but I know Judicial Watch is taking the preeminent lead in trying to get this information. And there's so much information we got, I can't go through it all with you here. So I encourage you to go to judicialwatch.org, look up our work on the NIH, raising questions that we don't raise the questions, the documents raise questions that show dishonesty in the way the vaccines were sold, that show corruption and dishonesty and potential crimes in the gain-of-function research that Fauci's agency was involved in Wuhan and elsewhere, and other dangers here in America, and who knows where else, related to gain-of-function research that they don't want you to know about, that we've exposed. As I said last week, I don't know about you, I consider this to be an important issue. Now we have this monkeypox vaccine, or this monkeypox virus. So we're going to go through this all again? Yes, unless we call them out. And in terms of deep state arrogance, it's hard to match the arrogance of Dr. Anthony Fauci. He is the highest paid government official in the land, and he doles out and is responsible for doling out billions of dollars in grants and such, giving him unmatched power in the history of science in terms of directing research and such. And we're not allowed to ask questions of him. I mean, I tell you, when I first raised questions about Fauci, this is kind of a fun story. You may not remember this. So, the COVID stuff starts happening. Fauci immediately takes a leadership role as a public face in describing what the issues are. And of course, everyone's very nervous and panicked. So people were looking for leadership. And, Fauci seemed pretty reasonable at the time, but, I'm always suspicious. But, I didn't necessarily think he was the worst person in the world or the worst bureaucrat in the world. But then I saw that someone had posted an email where he praised Hillary Clinton in very unusual terms. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? So I posted up a video of me saying, well, isn't that interesting? And that was all I said, with a link to the email. Well, I tell you, the New York Times had a story talking about that question I had about Fauci praising Hillary Clinton, showing a politicized favoritism for her. And I said, isn't that interesting? That got attention in the New York Times and other big media publications. That's how sensitive they were about any criticism of Fauci. So I thought to myself, and of course Judicial Watch, we're just generally skeptical, so it's not like just me asking questions. We've got a lot of people here who've been around the block and know when something's up. Oh, well, Fauci must be part of the protected class. And when you're part of the protected class in this town, it's usually because you've got something to be protected over in terms of corruption and misconduct and other issues. So we started asking questions about Fauci and what his agency was doing. We exposed, as I've highlighted, some of the dishonesty and secrets about the gain-of-function research and their work with China and other scandalous activity that, in my view, involved fraud in the least. And we've also worked with our friends at openthegovernment.com to expose some of the finances of Fauci and his colleagues. We sued for records about, something basic like his job description, the most important government official, arguably, in recent American history. And we had to sue to get details of what his actual job was. So it reminds me of that Office Space line. Office Space was a funny movie if you haven't seen it. And the corporate team comes in and they're asking the employees, who were very nervous to explain what their jobs are, what is it you see that you do here? And we had to sue to get that answer from Fauci. And of course, our lawsuit with Open the Books exposed hundreds of millions of dollars in royalty payments to NIH officials and others that Americans are greatly concerned about. And just more recently, we sued about Fauci's wife, who also works at NIH, believe it or not. Did you know that? Again, basic information about what she does, her finances, her financial disclosure forms and things. This is all public information. Frankly, it all ought to be up on the internet already, but it isn't, and that should tell you something. So again, it's a federal lawsuit for information we have an inherent right as American citizens to get under federal law. Well, we just filed another lawsuit about Fauci and his family because the cover-ups continue. We sued for her emails. So she's a government employee and she has emails and we want them about specific topics. Again, we asked about this last September. We've been getting a runaround for almost a year. We want all emails sent to and from NIH Clinical Center Department of Bioethics Director Christine Grady regarding vaccines for the prevention and or treatment of SARS-CoV-2 and or COVID-19. All emails sent to and from Ms. Grady referencing the terms antibody-dependent enhancement, ADE, pathological priming, pre-priming, paradoxical immune enhancement, and or disease enhancement. Those are phrases that you're not allowed to say as it relates to the vaccine. Look up those terms as it relates to the vaccine and you'll see why they censor people when they raise these issues. And of course, we wanted all emails between Grady and her husband, Director Fauci. Now, we're not asking for, and we wouldn't be allowed to get emails saying, honey, let's go get dinner. Did you pick up the chicken? You need to get eggs. We're going to go to the baseball game. We got a dinner engagement. Those personal emails are not subject to FOIA. That's obvious. But government-related emails are subject to FOIA, and we want them, and they're hiding them. They've been hiding the emails for almost a year in violation of the law. This is the very definition of a cover-up. The unlawful cover-up of Fauci's family government records strongly suggests there is something to hide. As I said, that's the protected class. They're protected for a reason. So that's another great lawsuit we got. More is coming. I've often observed the pandemic we need to worry about is not COVID. It's critical race theory, critical theory. The Marxist repackaged theories designed to destroy America as we know it, upend our constitutional system of government, end the United States of America. It's being taught in our schools. It's the animating principle or a key animating principle of the Biden administration. Our corporations have embraced it. Our media loves it. And of course, our military has even embraced it. We exposed how in West Point critical race theory and its cousins queer theory and radical feminist theory are being force-fed cadets there. And we knew from experience and other public reports that it was other service academies are being subjected to this type of theory and this type of training, of the cadets. As I've highlighted before, we have this responsibility. Not only does the military, but citizens and taxpayers to take care of these cadets. Make sure the rising leadership of our military aren't being abused. We're asking them to go out and defend our country and risk their lives in a leadership capacity. The least we can do is to make sure they're not abused when they go to be trained by taxpayer-funded academies with anti-American claptrap that's designed to divide them and to alienate them from the very country they're supposed to be defending. So we had to file another lawsuit against the Pentagon, just like we had to do against the Pentagon to get West Point documents, to get Naval Academy documents concerning critical race theory. Again, we waited a year. We just don't run to court. Maybe we should run to court, but we've got limited capacity because we have thousands of Freedom of Information Act requests. But this was August of last year, and they've been ignoring us for almost a year. Any and all PowerPoint presentations used for training and or classroom instruction discussing critical race theory and or white supremacy. Any and all emails referencing critical race theory sent between .mil and or .gov email accounts and any of the following USNA officials, the U.S. Naval Academy officials, Superintendent Sean Buck and or Deputy Superintendent Captain James Bates. Simply put, Marxist critical theory and its racial division have no place in the Naval Academy, which is training the next generation of Navy leadership. That the Pentagon has been unlawfully hiding these records for a year, again, suggests something awful is afoot. We kind of already know something awful is afoot because when I was on, I went on Fox News, I was on Tucker's program, and before we got into this discussion that we had had about West Point, he highlighted a video that had been exposed by the Federalist about a U.S. Navy video where they trained their members to create a safe space by using correct pronouns. The video emphasized how service members must use inclusive languages and not misgender others. So you have this transgender extremist agenda, which is all part of this critical theory agenda, being force-fed our entire Navy. I mean, already what we found at West Point would set your hair on end. It suggests that American blacks are still in the equivalent of slavery, a state of slavery. That's how anti-American this is. And of course, it's all attacking white privilege. So you've got this divisiveness based on race that obviously is anti-American and discriminatory because it targets people based on race. But the military ethic of unity and cohesion, how are those going to be advanced if you divide the cadets and the troops by race? These are dangerous times for our military because we have these Marxists who have taken over trainings of our cadets in the service academies, and obviously we've got the bigger issues with those who are currently in the military or enlisted, who are, you know, obviously just serving now, being trained to treat America as an enemy. So more is coming. We've got a ton of critical race theory, litigation, investigation going on because, as I say, this is a dire threat to America, and it's much worse a threat to the future of our country than any pandemic, whether it be COVID or monkeypox or whatever thing we're supposed to be worried about health-wise. This ideology is much more dangerous to the health of our nation. So with that, I encourage you, if you enjoy or outraged or feel educated about this, about what our government's up to as a result of what you're hearing here today, I encourage you to support Judicial Watch. Share, like, spread the word about this video, get the information, share that information, and of course support Judicial Watch. Go to judicialwatch.org and support our work directly. I encourage you to do so. Join our cause, join our movement. Our country is worth it. I will see you here next time on the Judicial Watch Weekly Update. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.